There's blood coming from that van. I looked over to where AJ was pointing. 3 houses up on the far side of the street, an old green custom van was leaned crookedly against the curb. I'd never noticed it on AJ's street before, but it had the desolate look of a car that's been abandoned to rot for some time. The walls of the van were tinged with rust and faded paint, the ghost of some old airbrush scene barely visible on the side of the van. It was getting dark, and we weren't that close, but I didn't see what he was talking about. Where? He went to point again, and then seemed to think better of it. You see the far right bottom corner of the back doors? It's running down the bumper there. You see it? At first, I didn't, but then I caught motion as another rivulet of something dripped off the bumper and onto the asphalt below. Yeah, I could tell now that something was definitely leaking. But how was AJ saying it was blood? It was so typical of him, getting dramatic over nothing. Rolling my eyes, I elbowed him. Yeah, I see it, but no way you can see it's blood from here. He frowned at me. It's blood. You can tell the way it's moving. Plus, what else could it be? Snorting, I shook my head as I glanced back at it. How about literally anything? Maybe they have a crate of oil or something in the van that's leaking. I mean, it doesn't look like water the way it's dripping, but let's not jump straight to the horror movie alternative, okay? I looked at AJ for confirmation that he was going to chill out, and what I saw on his face gave me pause. He seemed really worried about it, maybe even a little scared. I thought it was just some of his normal silly bullshit, but now I wasn't so sure. Look, when did you first notice the van? Has it been here for a while? He shook his head, glancing at me before going back to staring at the van. No, never. No, I've never seen it before. Wasn't out here when I left to meet you at the movie today. I raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? You tend to space out and not notice stuff sometimes. I pointed toward the van, and those tires look flat as shit. That thing looks like it's been parked there for a while, is my point. He shook his head again. No, I swear, I would have noticed an old serial killer van parked down from my house. And believe me, if it had been parked there for more than a couple days, my mom would have called the police or city council or something. She loses her shit about that kind of stuff. Nodding, I looked back at the van. Closer up, I had to admit that whatever was leaking from the van did look thick, like I think blood would look. And it could have been a dark red, though I couldn't say for sure. What caught my eye more was the airbrushed painting on the side of the van. It was in better shape than I thought originally, and at this angle and distance, I could make out more details. It was an elaborate portrait of a large, oval lake. On the far bank, I could see what might have been buildings, or just rust and damage to the overall picture, backlit by the light of twin red and green suns that were either setting or rising in the background. The whole thing had a faded, hazy look that made it look almost dreamlike, though whether that was intentional or just due to age, I couldn't say for sure. But I did want to get a closer look at... Hey, we're here. I looked around, momentarily confused, before focusing on AJ with a flush of embarrassment. Oh, shit. Sorry. I guess I spaced out for a second. He gave me a distracted smile before looking past me to where the van was parked. Fuck. That van is even closer to the house than I realized. I turned and looked. He was right. I would have sworn it was further down the street, too. I know, it's weird. But big deal, right? Let's just go inside, okay? He nodded, barely seeming to hear me. When I poked him in the stomach, he looked down and nodded again, this time meeting my eyes with a nervous smile. Yeah, you're right. Let's go. Normally, I would have walked the 2 miles back to my house when I left AJ's that night. But the memory of the van had haunted me since we'd gone in to have dinner with his family. We were both still 6 months away from getting licenses, but when his father offered to drive me home, I didn't object. Giving AJ a quick hug, I followed his father out into the garage and got in. As he backed out of the driveway, I turned and looked back to see if the van was still sitting there. I didn't like the nervous feeling I'd had for the past several hours, and if it was still lurking out there, I figured I'd ask AJ's father about it. But the van was gone, and while there may have been a dark puddle on the road where it had been, that could have just as easily been a trick of the light. I texted AJ right away to say that the van was gone, but I didn't get a response by the time I got dropped off at home. Heading inside, I told my parents goodnight and went up to take a shower before getting ready for bed. It was only when I got out of the shower that I saw I had missed several texts from AJ. Just looked and the van's still out there. Maybe it left and came back right after you were gone. I don't know. No, it's dumb, but it's bugging me. I think I'm going to go walk by it closer. It's under a light, so I can get a better look. Shit, it's cold out here. I wish you were with me. Okay, I just walked by it twice. It really does look like blood. I don't know. It's still dripping some from the bumper, and there's a big puddle under the van, I think. Also leaking from the big slide door on the other side. Get away from there. Go back inside, please. I hear something inside. Music. Wait, that's mine. Leave it alone. You're scaring me. Go back home and call me. Don't mess with that thing anymore. I think I should knock on the door. Someone could be hurt in there. Besides... Baby? Answer me. Answer me, please. You're scaring me. I just called and you didn't answer. If you don't answer me back in 2 minutes, I'm calling your house. They saw me. Who? Who saw you? White face. At the window. I ran. Didn't want to show where I lived. Behind gas station. I was terrified now. I thought I knew where he was talking about. There was a closed-down gas station on the block behind the street. If he ran all the way there, he was either pulling a big prank on me or he really was scared. Are you just fucking with me? Be honest or I'll be mad. Someone is coming. Coming to get you. Stay where you are if you can. I'm coming. I was already running downstairs, yelling for my parents to get up, that we had to go help AJ, that he was in trouble. Usually they would have argued, but I guess they could see by how I looked that something was really wrong. We loaded up in my mom's SUV and I told them where to go. When we got there, we rode all around the front and back of the gas station, but there was no sign of AJ or anything out of the ordinary. I'd held off texting or calling while we were headed over, just in case some lighter noise from the phone gave away his hiding spot to whoever was following him. But after we couldn't find him, I started doing both as we slowly headed back towards his house. He never answered, and when we got back to his house, he wasn't there either. His parents didn't even know he'd left the house again, and they hadn't heard anything from him either. We all went out looking again. At close to midnight, it was pitch black outside, but that also meant the streets were empty. No cars, no people, and no AJ walking back home. When we didn't find him that time, his parents called 911. 2 police cars showed up a few minutes later, and while 2 of the officers talked to AJ's mom and dad, the other talked to me. I told them everything I could think of. About us walking back from the movie, about the van, about the blood coming out of it, and what had happened when AJ went back out to confirm what he'd seen. The officer didn't comment, but I could tell she was skeptical as she thanked me and went to talk to my parents inside. I walked up and down the street in front of his house, calling out to him, looking for some sign I'd missed. I could still see the reddish-brown puddle where the van had been. I should have pointed it out to the cop before, but that should get them to believe me. Maybe they could even get a sample and tell us if it was human blood. But whatever. I didn't care about being right. I just wanted to get AJ back, and the van was sitting down the street. It hadn't been there before. I had just walked that way a couple minutes earlier, and I know it wasn't there. And I would have noticed if a car had pulled up while I was out there. But there it was, just the same. My mouth was dry. I wanted to go back inside and get the cops, but I was afraid that if I did, by the time I got them out here, the van would have disappeared again. So first, I take a couple pictures. I snapped 2 of the front corner, but I was so far away that even with the streetlights, you can barely make anything out. I glanced back toward the house, hoping the policewoman I'd been talking to would come back outside. I just waved her down and she could see for herself. But no luck. I was alone outside for the moment. Swallowing, I walked further down the street so I could get a closer and better picture of the side of the van. That weird painting on the side should make it easy to find again if it ran off or disappeared. I framed up the picture and went to snap it when I realized something. The painting had changed. It was still a painting of the same strange oval lake, but this time, the scene seemed to be at night. A misshapen yellow moon hung high in a dark purple sky, washing everything in its pale glow. I could see the distant towers of a black castle on the far shore, and scattered around the moon itself were little tears in the night sky that could have been black stars. My phone sank as I stared at the van. Was it the same van? It had to be, right? It looked the same except for the painting, and, well, maybe it looked a bit newer than it had before? Still, I didn't understand what was going on, and I needed to stop being an idiot and get some help. I raised my phone again to take one last picture when it buzzed in my hand. Stabbing the message with my thumb, I turned my phone to read it. "Get away from the van. Please, don't come closer." I felt the air thicken in my throat as I reread the message and fumbled to write a response. "Are you okay? Where are you in there?" "Yes. Well, please, stay away. You have to stay away." "No, I'm getting you out." I looked up as I realized I was hearing music periodically play nearby. I thought it was coming from inside the van, and while it was muffled, I still recognized it. It was AJ's ringtone. "I hear your phone. Get in the cop." I heard the music again, and suddenly, I remembered something AJ had texted earlier. "I hear something inside. Music? Wait, that's mine." I felt the world starting to sway around me as my phone buzzed again. "No, you don't understand." I texted back. "What don't I understand?" "It's not just me in here. You're here too." Hey everybody, hope you're enjoying today's video. Today's a double feature on the channel, so there'll be another story coming up in just a few seconds. I just want to give a trigger warning for the story coming up ahead. There is some themes of self-harm in this one. Just keep that in mind, and feel free to turn off the video if that's something that you don't want to be hearing about right now. It's totally understandable. And I'll have a quick afterword as well following this second story. Okay, hope you all enjoy. Two weeks ago, I got the call that my brother had done something unthinkable. It came as a complete shock to me. I know it's a cliche, but Jerry really didn't seem like the kind of person to do that to himself. Sure, he had problems, just like we all do. He was in a bad car wreck in college, and he battled depression for months after he realized that surgery and rehab were only going to give him most of his mobility back. Not all. But that was 7 years ago. He hardly even limped anymore. Had a good job and had just started dating a great girl a few months earlier. He hadn't said anything concrete, but I could tell from talking to him that they were in love, that he thought Lacey was the one. She was the one who called me first, and she sounded crushed. I drove out that night, and amid funeral arrangements and spending time with my parents and Lacey, I was so busy taking care of things that I didn't have time to stop and really let it sink in. My brother, one of my best friends since I was born, was really gone. It wasn't until I was sitting in his empty house, surrounded by belongings that I had to pack up or throw away, that I broke down and began to cry. I was crying so hard, so focused on my newfound grief, that I didn't hear the doorbell at first. When I did, I debated not answering it, as I rarely answered my own door. Still, Jerry had always been more friendly and outgoing, and it somehow felt wrong not to honor that and be hospitable while I was still in his last home. Wiping my face, I went to the door and opened it to see an older couple. "Hi there. I hope we're not interrupting." I looked at them confusedly for a moment. Jerry's not here." The woman frowned. "Oh, we know, honey. We heard what happened to him." The man leaned forward as though to whisper, though when he spoke, his voice was loud and harsh in my ears. "Terrible thing. Good guy. Terrible thing." The woman's frown deepened as she glanced at the man and then thrust forward a covered dish. "We lived just next door, and we didn't know him well enough to come over during the funeral and whatnot. And we've been out of town recently as well. But we did want to do something. And we saw that someone was over here, cleaning up, so I thought we'd bring over this casserole." She paused before adding, "It's a bean casserole. My recipe." I took the offered dish numbly. This wasn't the first food offering I'd had to take in the last few days, and I admit to being relieved that this was the purpose of their visit. It meant they'd go away, satisfied they'd helped in some nebulous way by giving food no one asked for or wanted. Except, they didn't go away. At least, not yet. "Everything going okay? Got anyone helping you?" The woman's eyes were roving past me into the shadows of Jerry's foyer. I quickly found my faint gratitude souring into annoyance. So that was it then? Nosy neighbors wanting a peek at the horror show? I shrugged. "It's fine. I've got it handled. My brother was a neat guy, so mainly just a matter of figuring out what to keep and what to throw away." I was about to launch into the wrap-up speech about how I better get back at it when the man interrupted. "Have you run across anything strange so far?" I stared at him blankly. No? What do you mean?" He looked away. "Oh, I don't know. They say you don't really know someone until you go through their stuff, right?" Gritting my teeth, I started pushing the door shut. "Look, I need to go. Thanks for the casserole," and the man blocked the door with his foot. "We mean no offense, friend. Want us to come in and keep you company for a bit?" I pushed against the door harder and felt the wood flex slightly, but it didn't budge. "No, I wouldn't like that. Please, move your foot and go on." The woman gave me a thin smile as she nudged the man in his side. "Sorry to keep you. We'll let you get back at it." The man reluctantly moved his foot back, and I immediately shoved the door shut with a solid thump. Fuck me. What was their deal? Were they just that pushy? I jumped as my phone rang. It was the number of the detective that had worked Jerry's case. "Miss Sanchez? This is Jim Truitt. How are you doing today?" Swallowing, I backed away from the door and returned to the living room where I'd been packing. "I'm fine. Packing stuff up. Anything I can help you with?" "Well, I'm closing out your brother's file, and we have a few personal effects that we either need to release to you or destroy." I felt my legs growing weak, so I sat down between a table and a half-full packing box. You mean like his clothing and stuff? I could hear how uncomfortable Truett was over the phone. No, not his clothes. They were, well, they're considered a biohazard due to their condition, so those are typically burned once we're done with them. But he had a wallet with various cards, a couple of photos, and $57 in cash. He also had his cell phone and the keys I already gave you and, well, the note he left. He paused and then rushed forward quickly. Not that you have to take the note or any of it. People feel different ways about that kind of thing, and we're happy to do whatever you and your family want. The air felt heavy around me, making it hard to move or think. I knew what the note had said. I'd seen it the day after I arrived in town, and despite it being in a plastic evidence bag, I'd been able to tell Detective Truett that it looked like Jerry's handwriting, even if the words made no sense. I've had enough. Goodbye. Love you all. Jerry. I felt fresh tears springing up in the corner of my eyes, and I fought them back. Well, the wallet and stuff, yeah. But the note? I don't want the note. None of us want that. Okay, fair enough. I'll have the rest up front for you to pick up whenever you like. Just tell them that... Are you sure he did it? Huh? The man sounded younger when he was caught off guard, and it took him a second to process what I was asking and respond. Did what? Oh, that. Yeah. It just didn't seem like something he'd do. His voice was softer and tinged with sadness now. Look, I know why you feel like that. Well, I've never told anyone outside my family about this, but when my grandmother died a few years back, that's how she went too. She was 87, had bone cancer, so I could see her reasoning, even if I didn't agree with it. But there was still a part of me, and my dad too, that had trouble accepting that she'd do that to herself on purpose. I guess my point is, you never really know what other people have going on inside and what they're capable of. And it's not your responsibility to save them from themselves. He cleared his throat. Not trying to preach at you. Just want you to know that what you're feeling is natural, and will pass with time. I sighed and wiped at my face again. I appreciate it. Thanks for your help. I hung up, and it was as I was leaning forward to set my phone on the floor that I caught a glimpse of white under the table next to me. My first thought was that it was warranty paperwork, or something similar that the maker of the furniture had stapled to the underside of the table and that Jerry had just never noticed or removed. But as I looked closer, I saw it was a small white envelope that had been taped there. My mouth was dry as I reached for it and gave it a tug. It was well secured, and took 3 yanks to free the envelope without tearing it. Once I was holding it, I studied it for a moment. There was no writing on the envelope, and it looked fairly new. New enough that most likely Jerry had put it there during the nearly 3 years he had lived in the house and had this furniture. Licking my lips, I gently opened the envelope. Inside was an instant camera photo and a short note. I felt my stomach lurch as I recognized Jerry's handwriting immediately. If someone finds this note, please know that if I have died or gone missing, it was not of my own free will. They keep finding ways in. I don't know why they keep coming, but I know they do things to me while I'm asleep. The door keeps popping up. I took a picture of it. They're growing angry, and I don't know what to do. Please help me if you can. Or if it's too late, please, get away. Get far away. I read the note 5 more times before turning to the photo. It was a picture of what looked like one of the walls in the dining room, and in the middle of it was a tall door of dark wood and black metal. I'd have to check, but I didn't remember any door like that in the entire house. First, though, I needed to call the detective back, tell him what I'd found. Pushing redial, I clenched my phone hard enough to make it creak when his voicemail picked up. I left him a vague but urgent message, but after I hung up, I was unsure what to do. I could call 911 or go to the police station, but odds were they would just hand me back over to Truett anyway, since he was the one who worked Jerry's death. I was angry and scared, but there was no reason to think that waiting a few minutes or hours would make some huge difference to anything now. So, I went over and laid down on the sofa, planning to just rest and organize my thoughts for a little while before trying to call the detective again. Before I knew it, I was asleep. And when I woke up, night had fallen and the house was dark, except for dim patches of light streaming in from the street lamps outside. I began to sit up when I heard a noise coming from the kitchen. It was a stealthy, furtive noise, and my first thought was a mouse or rat. Shuddering at the thought, I got up and began easing my way through the house. I knew the layout of the furniture well enough to avoid the chairs and tables, but the scattered boxes were a different matter. I stumbled on 3 between the sofa and the dining room. It was as I looked back up from bumping into the 3rd that I thought I saw a quick movement in the shadows across the dining room and headed into the hall. I froze for a moment, then fumbled for my phone to turn on the light. I shined the light across the far end of the dining room and the hall beyond, but I didn't see anything. I thought about it and also checked the walls of the room. No door like in the picture either. Hearing blood pounding in my ears, I found the switch and flipped on the light. The light made everything feel less menacing, but I still felt full of dread as I opened the door to the kitchen and shone my light around on the floor. I hated mice, and if it was a roach big enough to make that racket, I didn't want to. It wasn't a mouse or a rat or a roach. It was a folded piece of paper. Finding the kitchen lights, I flipped them on before bending down to pick it up. I found myself hoping it would just be an old receipt, an invoice from the Tombstone Company, or some other scrap of what remained of closing out Jerry's business. But it wasn't any of those things. It was a note in what looked like my handwriting, signed with my name. I've had enough of everything. Goodbye. Love you all. Connie. Alright, hopefully you all enjoyed today's video. Both of these stories were written by Brandon Faircloth, also known as Veristol on Reddit. I'll include some links below to their website, their YouTube page, as well as their books on Amazon. Brandon Faircloth, a super talented, super prolific author on Amazon as well as on Reddit. They've got a ton of books out. I picked up recently their Don't Let It In short story collection. Highly recommend this author. If you want to give them some support on Amazon, I'm sure they would hugely appreciate it. And, drop them an impartial review if you want to pick up one of their books. For anybody who missed on Wednesday the announcement, I'll just mention quickly again here, the first Hollow's End book, Welcome to Hollow's End, is out now on Amazon. So I'll have links to that in the description as well. Or just search for Jordan Group Hollow's End book on Amazon. It'll pop up. All right, that's it for me today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys again on Monday for a new story. All right, hope you have a great day.